Came from the NBA, it came from Bradley Beal. Wizards and Sixers pick it up in the second half. Beal had 32 in the first half, and he just kept it going. Look at him here on the pull-up three. He was 7 of 10 from three-point range. Here he is with 5 minutes left in the third. His team down 18 points. Beal at that 44 at that point, giving it his all, and he was by no means done. Later in the third, Beal with 53 points. We got a turnover. We got Beal laying it up and good. He was 20 of 35 from the floor. Finished the third quarter with 57 points. Now in the fourth, it's a 2-point game. Beal stepping back over Embiid. He's got 59 at that point. By the way, Embiid had himself a very good night as well. This is Ben Simmons throwing it up. This is Embiid putting it in. Embiid had 38. Simmons had 17 and 12. Bradley Beal scored 60 points, tying a franchise record, but it wasn't enough as the Sixers get the win, 141 to 136. And afterwards, Bradley Beal frustrated.
I'm pissed off. I'm mad. This is just, I don't count any of my, career highs. They've been in losses. So, I don't give a damn. You throw it right out the window with the other 2 or 3 I had. I just want to win. Sometimes it forces me to score 50, 60, whatever the case may be, but I just want to win and whatever that looks like. So, came up a little short tonight. We just got to keep at it. Nobody's going to feel sorry for us.
We all know Bradley Beal is one of the elite scorers in the NBA, but for whatever reason, his team has trouble winning when he puts up big numbers. In his career, Washington is 1-6 when Beal scores 45 or more, including the game last night.
It's sad to see, because if any of us was out there, I think would have been tear gas, mace, probably gunshots,
Thousands of white people can storm the Capitol and not face any sort of obstruction from police. But heaven forbid a 12-year-old black boy carry a toy gun in a park, or a 15-year-old black boy walk home from a store with a bag of Skittles, or a young black male run through the neighborhood on a jog. Heaven forbid any of those things happen.
Welcome back to First Take. Political commentator extraordinaire Angela Rye joins us on the show. Honored to have you on the show, Angela. Thank you for being here. Yesterday, one can only imagine how you're going to react publicly, that is, on this show, to what you saw yesterday. Give it to me. Talk to me about what your thoughts are.
Well, there are 2 conflicting thoughts, or at least 2 things that I'm balancing, Stephen A., and that is this. I worked on the Hill. I grew up as the young professional on Capitol Hill. It was my first job. I had a one job out of law school, kind of lobbying for HBCUs. And then right after that, when the Democrats gained control of the House, I was right there. My first boss on Capitol Hill was Benny Thompson on the Homeland Security Committee. And that is where I worked. And before that, interning for Maxine Waters, the Hill has been my professional life. And so I'm watching that yesterday, thinking about all of the death threats that Ilhan Omar, who is a dear sister to me, AOC, Congresswoman Maxine Waters has received, Congressman Thompson, who still chairs the Homeland Security Committee, along with all of the other members who I worked for at the Congressional Black Caucus, folks who I helped staff up their offices, figuring out what they were going to do, helping them to raise money when I could, doing events for them in their districts, even over this summer. And so these aren't people who I just worked with and for, their family. So watching this, knowing that from every single side of the Capitol, these domestic terrorists were allowed in that building because they believed it was theirs without regard for human life, the staff who are like my brothers and sisters, that was horrible to watch. And in that moment, you feel the anguish, the concern, the anxiety that every parent feels every time their child leaves and may have an interaction with a police officer. And you see the difference between when someone believes the police works for you and when someone else believes from all of their past experience that the police work against them, perhaps even shooting to kill them when they protect and serve everyone else. And so to that end, you have a quote from James Baldwin where he says, to be a Negro in this country and to be relatively conscious is to be in a rage almost all the time. And we've been in that rage, not just for 4 years, but for 402 years, knowing how much we worked to establish what this country would become and seeing where it is, which is not far enough, is more than frustrating. Understanding that justice does not always serve us, understanding that the people who were up there, who were able to run roughshod all over the Capitol, may not even face consequences, to the point where they were putting up videos bragging about what they've done, to the point where they were able to take selfies with police officers, to the point where they're still probably in their hotels right now. And they weren't just spreading ideas of domestic terrorism, terrorizing police officers, their staff, everybody who works on Capitol Hill to ensure that they're doing the people's work. They also weren't masked up. So they're also spreading coronavirus when we're at a new peak with a new strain of the virus. So it's maddening. It's still scary. All I can tell you is this morning I'm really sitting in gratitude because everybody was safe. That I know. I do feel horrible for the people who lost their lives, but everyone who I know is okay. I just don't know how long they'll carry this trauma.
Max, go ahead.
Yep. Stephen A. brought up in the last segment conservative pundits who have condemned the insurrectionists. But in fact, you brought up Mark Levin and Sean Hannity. They did a great deal to foment outrage about a supposedly fraudulent election, which was actually, as Trump got routed in the courts, on the up and up. But even Joe Scarborough, who was a Republican congressman before he was a TV personality, said if they were black people, they would have been shot in the face. That's how he put it. And I think everyone understands this. There was an unredacted FBI report at the end, toward the end of last year, that talked about the threat and the actual instances of white supremacists infiltrating law enforcement. Is your feeling that something like the failure of law enforcement yesterday, compared to what it would have been, hard to prove a counterfactual, but had they been black and storming the Capitol, do you think that is an issue of institutional racism, or is it an issue of the fact that, after all, the president called the date January 6th and then sent them over there and still has control of some aspects of law enforcement in the area? Do you feel that changes with a new administration, or is that entrenched?
It's such a dynamic question. I think it's both, right? I think that this country was built on systemic racism and oppression, and what you saw on Capitol Hill yesterday were people who know how they got their power, how they've stayed in power, and fearing what it will look like if they were to lose that power. Because people know about karma, people know about the laws of sowing and reaping, and they are worried about what it will look like if people gave back to them what we've received over the last several hundred years in this country. So I think you have that, and you have systemic failures. My understanding from yesterday is that Capitol Hill police made a calculated decision in the moment once they knew. I have no idea why there wasn't preparation for this. This is something that should have been prepared for since November. But they made a calculated decision to go in the building to ensure that members and staff were protected instead of protecting the outside of the building, which allowed for more people to come in. However, it doesn't help when officers are also moving gates to ensure that people can get into the Capitol. It doesn't help when people are busting windows that there's not a response, right? So there's all of that. I also don't think that these systemic failures, that the low staff count would have been an issue if they were Black Lives Matter protesters. We saw over the summer rubber bullets, all of the equipment that were transferred to local governments from the Pentagon to take on protesters looking like war. I saw pictures of Capitol Hill police officers yesterday standing on the steps in a human barricade with their hands in their pockets, right? I saw a Black officer being chased through the Capitol, running from the protesters, trying to ensure him, probably knowing as a Black man, as an officer, that even if he shoots them, he will be held responsible, knowing these protesters will not, for whatever they ended up doing or could have done to him. So there are a number of factors. It's not a cut and dry, black and white, no pun intended situation. It really is all of the many layers of racism, the things that are personal and implicit biases and explicit biases in our hearts, as well as the systemic issues that exist in the country.
Max Kellerman, I will address your points about what you said about some of the conservatives after this interview is over. But Angela, I wanted to get back to you in this regard. When we saw the players take the positions that they took, I want to know, how did that resonate with you? These professional athletes speaking up, basically letting everybody know we're not going anywhere. We're going to continue to give voices to the voiceless, and we're going to continue to highlight and illuminate these issues so we as a society can address them. How successful do you believe they have been and they're going to be in their quest to do what they're doing as we move forward from this?
Well, and I think to that point, the most important thing that the athletes can do is remember that this is not just about a moment. It's not about doing what is popular at the time. It's not about what, making sure that you sound smart and articulate about these issues. It's also making sure you stay engaged. So whether we're talking about what happened over the summer, or we're talking about the ways in which so many athletes engaged in the election, whether we think about what the Atlanta Dream did to solidify Kelly Loeffler's fate, all of those things matter. Yesterday, speaking out about the violence, the insurrection, the domestic terrorism on Capitol Hill, and knowing the distinctions that exist in a justice that serves a Black America versus a white America, knowing that we cannot afford to say, this is not who we are. That is denying exactly what this country is. It's not what it should be, but it is exactly what it's always been. And so long as they continue to give voice to that, using their platforms that effectively, I think that's exactly what we need. We all need to be saying the same thing from every perch. And it doesn't just need to be Black athletes. There need to be allies who are in this. Max, to your point, knowing, if you know full well that the outcome would have been different had the protesters looked different, that's